What is up, my Sothic sluts? Today we are going to be discussing The Summer of Jordi Perez and the Best Burger in Los Angeles by Amy Spalding. The book follows 17-year-old Abby Ives during the summer between her junior and senior year of high school while she takes an internship at a local clothing designer shop where the unexpected second intern catches more than just Abby's eye. While this potential summer romance blooms, Abby helps her best friend's boyfriend's best friend, or friend-in-law, if you will, while he helps his dad develop the best blank, which results in them trying to determine the best burger in Los Angeles. Also important to the story is Abby's relationship with her parents, and more specifically her mother, who happens to be this small local celebrity who's made a name for herself being like a granola health nut chef, which is a stark comparison to Abby's bright, colorful, fat self. As though navigating first love wasn't hard enough, especially when you didn't think you were gonna find it for yourself, Abby finds herself in indirect competition with her new girlfriend for the coveted job that the summer internship might turn into. The book is a very fun, fluffy, kind of funny book. Definitely young adult in age range. I mean, obviously the book features high school characters, but as an adult in my mid-20s, I still find myself enjoying it, possibly even more than I did when I read it as a teenager. Ultimately, the book is definitely just very low stakes fluff, but sometimes that's exactly what you want or need to read, especially for myself who if you guys follow my channel, you will know that a lot of the books I read are very horror adjacent, which I absolutely love, but sometimes you don't want exclusively dark content. Sometimes you just want the fluffy little Sothic romance that has no high stakes and everything ends up fine in the end. As an adult, I do find some of the characters' kind of feelings and reactions to different things a little bit juvenile, but I don't necessarily think that it's unrealistic. You do have to remember that the characters are teenagers, and I know how much more dramatic my teenage ass was compared to myself now, so as juvenile as I do find it, I also find it to be realistic. I will say that the first couple chapters of the book does make the main character, Abby, feel a little bit annoying and a little bit more than I wish it had, because I find myself having a little bit of trouble getting into it the first couple chapters, and then you get used to it and it's totally fine, and the second half of the book is developed so much better. It's really just that first kind of chapter or two where I'm you're kind of annoying in a way that might turn people off before giving the entire book a chance. So if you're gonna read it for yourself, I definitely recommend reading the whole book before passing judgment, because the first couple chapters, she's definitely a little bit more annoying than the character is overall as a whole, but it's definitely not enough to make me not read the book. Quite frankly, I have read this book many, many times, and over various years. It's one that I kind of find myself coming back to again and again, just because it is, kind of cute and it's very relatable to my own personal life in certain aspects, and it's just the low stakes fluff that's fun to read. I do think that it is really, really nice to see a male-female friendship without any ulterior motives in the book, because in the book we have Abby, who is the main character, who happens to be gay, so she's just into the ladies. So Abby befriends Jax, who is Abby's best friend's boyfriend's best friend, because they're both kind of out of best friends right now, because they're just the best friends are dating. So when you're in high school, your partner definitely tends to take precedent more than your friends do. So they kind of found themselves lonely and ended up befriending each other and having this summer trying to find the best burger in Los Angeles, because they're trying to help Jax's father develop an app to find the best blank in the city. Jax obviously is not trying to date Abby or anything like that. He just genuinely wants to be friends. And I feel that is so rare to see that it's really nice that we get that. But at the same time, it's kind of sad that it's so nice that we get that, because it's is that really so rare to see in media? But as far as the media that I've consumed, it is. So I really, really enjoy that aspect of the book and definitely want to see more media just embrace friendships. Like, why does romantic or sexual love have to be the be all end all of everything? Like, I love my friends to death, and some of the best relationships in my life are my friendships. Why can't that be normalized and like coveted and accepted? On that same topic, in regards to the best friends who are dating each other, I do think that it is really interesting to see the reflection of the feelings that you can have when your friends start dating other people and when they invest more of their time into those relationships versus the friendships like they had in the past. And the feelings of jealousy that can come up with that, and like wanting to be happy for your friend, but also feeling bad that like you guys don't have the same vibe that you used to have and missing that friendship, and just all of the complex emotions that can come with that, especially the younger that you are. But like as an adult, I still find myself navigating those types of feelings because unfortunately it is more common than not for people to kind of change their personality and the entire way that they carry themselves and what they do when they're in a relationship. So it's really, really hard to see your friends going through that and knowing that like your relationships with them are so much different when they're single. And I definitely think that it is something that should be explored more, especially for a younger demographic, when you're like first starting to date people and first experiencing those things. I think it's really, really important to know that like it's definitely a very relatable feeling, and unfortunately something that you are going to have to navigate for a large portion of your life as long as you are friends with people who are dating other people. There were definitely some more realistic parent-child dynamics within the book that I've seen in other things, because like if you're familiar with the YA genre, you'll definitely kind of notice the phenomena of just like the MIA parents. Like there's entire stories going on and like parents have no involvement, which is very unrealistic for characters who are teenagers, because like as a teenager, you don't just have like complete free reign and like free autonomy over your life and what you're doing. Like you typically still live at home. Like you still have to engage with your parents and they are a very active part of your life, whether you want them to be or not. Like they're definitely there. And there's a lot of YA books where they just like completely do not mention parents do not exist. And it's like the teenager, it might as well just be like in their mid-20s, an adult existing by themselves. Or we'll get like the extreme opposite where like if the parents are mentioned, they'll be like incredibly horrible or abusive or just these terrible people and like this like traumatic plot point. So it was really, really nice to see this like kind of in between of that, where it was very realistic like parent-child dynamics, but it wasn't like perfect, you know, it was very strained, and neither the parent nor the child kind of really knew how to navigate that. You know, like Abby has this beef with her mom because her mom just does not really seem to understand her as a person and is not accepting of the fact that, you know, she is plus size despite the fact that she's healthy. Like her mom is convinced that there's something wrong with her and that like she can't be happy until she's like thin and pretty. And Abby is trying to be fine with herself as she is. And it's really hard to navigate that type of dynamic. And they also have like the father thrown in who's kind of just this neutral middle ground. And I really liked seeing the exploration of that within the book, because you really just don't get to see a lot of family dynamics explored within the YA genre, especially in more realistic ways. And I really liked seeing that inclusion. And especially when you also add the dynamic of there being another sibling who has moved out and is currently in college. Like Abby has a sister, and that's another contributing factor that like adds to the family tensions, because like they used to work really well as this 4-person family unit, and now that the sister's like off in college, everything's kind of thrown off, especially between like Abby and her mom, who have like much more tension when they don't have this like buffer of a sister in between. And then also like how the sibling relationships change. Like, used to be incredibly close and like shared a bedroom, and like your sister was your best friend, but now she's off at college living her life, having a new boyfriend, and doesn't seem to like respond to you anymore. And like it's just like this complete difference in dynamic that I think is going to be very, very relatable for a lot of people, and is also a good thing to explore, because we definitely get like a little bit of an arc with that, where like Abby obviously has all these like feelings about it, but kind of lives this summer and like has her whole life going on without her sister there, and realizes that like she loves her sister, and her sister ultimately still is her best friend, but she doesn't need her in the exact ways that she thought she did. We also love to see a fashionable fat bitch who does not lose weight by the end of the book, and a fun sapphic romance where there is not homophobia involved in the storyline. Like, we can have those things in books. We can have queer storylines where homophobia is not a contributing factor. And we can have weight-related storylines that don't end in a weight loss arc. And I think that is so incredibly important for people to be able to see, because like, literally people who have stories that involve like plus size and fat characters, like it always ends up either being a thing where like they lose weight and get healthy and blah, blah, blah by the end of the book, which like being fat does not necessarily equate to being unhealthy. There are so many different reasons why people are different sizes. Who gives a fuck? Like, it's, those two are not necessarily the same. And it's also just so nice to see a queer romance that doesn't involve homophobia. Like, all of the families and parents of people involved are okay with their kids being queer. I mean, on Abby's end, there's a little bit of like confusion, and it's not necessarily embraced, but it's not unaccepted either. Like, that kind of adds to the contributing like family dynamic, but there's no blatant homophobia anywhere within the book. And I don't know if I have ever come across a queer storyline that did not in any way involve homophobia, quite frankly. So that is so nice and so important to see, because like, yes, unfortunately, we do live in the world that we live in. So there is so much discrimination and homophobia and hate towards different people, but not every aspect of your life is going to be filled with that. Like, there are safe places and safe people and acceptance and embracement and community that you can find. I liked that the romance aspects of the book stayed pretty PG, because like, as an adult, I have no interest in reading sex scenes between minors, but also I feel like as a minor, it's important to know that like, not everybody is having sex and not everybody is super sexual at a young age. Like, teenagers are teenagers and they're gonna be doing what they're doing, but the important thing is to be educated and safe about what you're doing. And I feel like in my own experience, it felt like most people I know were having sex, and like most media involves teenagers, like involves having sex. So it was really nice to see a romance that didn't immediately go to that territory. And I think that's really important for younger individuals to see, that like, you can have a very fulfilling relationship and not immediately have to jump into bed or feel that pressure to. And like, they literally talk about in the book how they're like not ready for certain things. And I really liked that aspect of the book, and think that that should also be reflected in more media. Wow, I really feel like this review is just me being like, these are things that I like and more media should do that. Surprisingly an overwhelmingly positive review for what I typically have to say. But with that, we'll actually go into a brief criticism. I wish authors knew that sometimes they could be more vague about locations. Because like, sometimes authors will be so hyper specific about like street names and locations, and like, not everybody lives in Los Angeles. I'm sorry, not everybody is super familiar with Los Angeles, so you name dropping all these different like streets and locations and areas of the city is not doing anybody any good helping to visualize, unless you're intimately familiar with Los Angeles. And like, I'm vaguely familiar with Los Angeles, and it still did not help me at all. If anything, it almost detracted from the book a little bit. Like, I was just like, okay, like like none of it was helping me visualize, and the whole point was that it was supposed to help you visualize. So I just wish that authors knew that they did not have to be hyper specific. Like, yeah, it's super cool that you're super familiar with a location and that you want your story to be very realistic. It can be realistic without having the literal realism of geographical explanations of things. Just for the record, this is certainly not the only book that I have had see that problem. Another aspect of the story that I thought was really neat to be included was the fact that Abby doesn't have Abby doesn't have a driver's license. And I think that is something that is so important to see in media, especially nowadays, because that is becoming increasingly common. Like, the youth are not getting driver's license as much as they used to be. And I think that that is something that's really good to be reflected in media, because like, literally, like all media, just about, like any media that I can think of that involve teenage characters, like all of these characters magically have their licenses and like their own cars and like no restrictions on transportation, which is super convenient for the storylines, but that's not super realistic because a lot of people don't have that. And of course, like, not everything has to be relatable to every individual person, but like when you're talking about teenagers, like not all of teenagers are going to have access to like immediate transportation, and that plays a part in the book, you know, like Abby has to walk everywhere and plan around the fact that she doesn't have a car. And I think that that's so neat to be like to see reflected. I do wish that the resolution of the ending was expanded on a little bit, because it's almost rushed. Like, for as low stakes fluff as the book is, there's a little bit of drama because like the story, the plot has to, you know, it can't just be perfect the whole time. There has to be like storylines. So there's definitely a little bit of tension and like issues within the story. I don't want to like spoil it in case you want to read the book for yourself, but I do think that the resolution and the ending was a little bit rushed. Not in a way to where it feels unfinished, but I would have stood to have seen the book a little longer. Like, it's really not a particularly long book, just a fairly average sized YA novel. And it could have stood to have expanded another chapter or two and like stretch things out a little bit and just elaborate. Ultimately, I do think it's a fun little short story. And obviously I like it as a book, but I would love to see this adapted into either a movie or a miniseries. Like, it doesn't need to be a long-standing TV show or anything like that, because literally it just takes place over a summer. So like a Netflix miniseries or just like a decent length movie would be a perfect film adaptation for this, and I would absolutely love to see it because I think there are so many aspects that could be improved upon. I think there's a lot of room for it to be super artistic and really visually appealing, as well as just super cool to have various representation of different characters and to get to see main characters who are people of color and who are fat and just so many different things. Oh, I have one more gripe about the book, and it has nothing to do with the actual like writing of the book. Like, this has nothing to do with Amy Spalding. As far as I'm aware, it's probably more of a publishing issue. The cover of the book is clearly not a fat bitch. Her hair was also not pink. They photoshopped it to be pink. They specifically describe Abby as having shoulder-length cotton candy colored hair. Hence the wig I'm wearing today. Hence the literal embodiment of looking like a piece of cotton candy today. So I'm sorry, that is like a hot purpley pink. Like, that is not a cute, soft cotton candy pink. So if you're gonna be photoshopping it, Photoshop it accurately to what the book describes. And also, use a fat model. Please. I am begging you. Like, it would not have been that hard. Like, literally, like, I could sit here with a burger and it would have been a more fucking accurate looking cover to the book than this is. I definitely think that this is a more dated cover, so I would not mind seeing a re-release of it, because I do still really think that like it would do well with youth today. I think it's still like a fun story that should be read by people. I just would love to see a redesign of it in order to actually make that happen. But anyways, thank y'all so much for watching. I had a blast hanging out with y'all. Peace.